Well, my friends, you thought the Switch 2 was already powerful enough? You thought Cyberpunk couldn't look any silkier on Nintendo's next home console? Well, it looks as though we're all wrong, because seemingly and very excitingly, it looks as though the Switch 2 is going to be getting not just one major power boost, but two major power boosts. This comes via Nintendo over on X. We're going to get into that in a minute, but that was put forward to my attention by a Nintendo insider, Nash Weedle, and we're going to talk about Nash later on in the video, because more than a week ago, he also put forward information himself confirming one of these two power boosts is in fact happening and could be arriving before the end of the year. What does it mean for how games will look and run on the Switch 2? This is very exciting, and we're going to get into it momentarily. But before we do, don't forget you can win yourselves a Switch 2 console right here on this channel at launch, when we'll be doing a very special 24-hour live launch special. So if you want a chance to win Nintendo's next home console, you just got to hit that like and subscribe and tune in on the day, see how your luck pans out for you. But to the very exciting news, my friends. Yes, it seems as though the Switch 2 is going to get a big boost to its specs. And as I said, this came over on X, where Nintendo were referencing a conversation that was happening on family boards by a guy called Matt Again, who's got a very good connection with developers. And this is what they showed us. So we can see that Nintendo posted a link to an article, and here it says Nintendo Switch 2 is expected to get a major performance upgrade soon. And if we go into the article itself, then we can see that they are basically reminding us of the specs currently inside the Switch 2. As we all know, it has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 8 CUDA cores. And they tell us that, as we know, currently developers can use up to 9 to run their games on the Switch 2, with 3 gigabytes of RAM being reserved for the operating system. And most of that, a lot of people seem to think, is to do with game chat, right? Keeping game chat running in the background, of course, as well as things like the eShop and such. But it seems as though things will be changing going forward, and this is very exciting. But why do I say that? Well, it's because of a conversation that they are referencing that happened over on family boards between someone called Peter Peters and Matt Again. Now, Matt Again is someone who has a connection to developers, and in this thread, Peters is basically discussing how currently the specs, the RAM and the cores, are spread on the Switch 2 in order to make games run and the operating system. And this is what he says. The Switch got a 20% OS RAM improvement, and I think it was even less for the Xbox Series S. This means a best case scenario is 2 to 2.4 gigabytes at minimum for the Switch 2 OS RAM in the future, still more than the average 1.5 to 2 gigabytes expectations. And OS CPU cores will probably stay at 2 the whole generation. I don't know how feasible or easy it would be to optimize OS CPU cores usage like it would be for OS RAM. Game chat is demanding and one of, if not Nintendo's main feature on Switch 2. It even has a physical button in all the controllers. It will be present in all their games. But very excitingly, Matt Again comes in at this point and he says, I've heard the goal is to get it down to 2 gigabytes and 1 core, but no idea when or if that will be accomplished. More resources have been released since the earlier dev environment though, and I expect that to continue. So there you go, my friends. We can see right there, Matt Again, and keep in mind, this is a guy who's got connections with developers. He is saying that he thinks Nintendo is about to free up 1 more gigabyte of RAM for developers to use for their games, and then have the operating system working on 2 gigabytes of RAM with 1 CUDA core. And this is super exciting. And why is that? Well, we're already getting amazing results on the Switch 2. We are getting games that are rivaling not the PS4, no, but the Xbox Series S, and in some cases surpassing it. We have seen this with comparisons of Street Fighter 6 looking better on Nintendo's new console than it does on the Xbox Series S. And just the other day, and I'm going to show you a reference of this, just the other day, Digital Foundry put up a comparison of Cyberpunk, compared the Switch 2 version to that, not just of the PS4, but that on the Xbox Series S. And do you know what the results were? Let me tell you quickly. The results were that we got a better and cleaner image on the Switch 2 than that on the Xbox Series S. You don't believe me? Have a look at this.
You've also got a shot where we're turning into the sort of market district. And on the Series S version, there's always been this problem with reflections kind of having all this speckling artifacts, lots of noise. It's very difficult to ignore sometimes, and obviously all the artifacts that come along with objects entering and disappearing in front of edges. Suddenly you'll see the raw edge. Switch 2 with DLSS, even though it's running at a lower native pixel count overall, it gets away with a much sharper picture for sure, and also removes a lot of that noise as well in the process. So really impressive, just purely on the image quality front. There's a lot of stuff we could dig into. I'm sure if we had the ability to capture it at the exact same time of day, match the dynamics of the NPC placement, but this is definitely clear right now that there's similar to what we saw with Street Fighter 6 when we compared Series S to Switch 2, the footage that we had. There is a big benefit to moving to DLSS there.
Amazing, my friends. Already now at the very beginning of the Switch 2's life, we are getting games that look and run better on the Switch 2 than that on the PS4, obviously, but than the Xbox Series S. Remember, it was only weeks ago when Digital Foundry themselves said that we should be expecting PS4 level performance on the Switch 2. And now they're having to come out and say that, you know what, you're right, Street Fighter 6 looks better on the Switch 2 than the Xbox Series S. Cyberpunk now looks better on the Switch 2 than the Xbox Series S. But if this information, these rumors of the Switch 2 giving more RAM to its developers, this is going to be so exciting because it means that games like Cyberpunk could put more resources into the quality of assets, into hard tasks like ray tracing, into better DLSS, into less popping, into better running of these massive open world games. This is going to be a huge change. And I can already hear you asking out there, what does this mean for GTA 6? Does it make it even more possible? I have no idea, but it's a step in the right direction. So this is very exciting indeed, and a super boost, because if we're getting games that already look this amazing and an intensive game like Cyberpunk on day one, then we can only imagine what developers can do with the extra specs, extra RAM on the Switch, making games from the ground up. Imagine that then. But my friends, this is not the only upgrade that seemingly the Switch 2 will be getting, because as I said earlier, Nintendo insider Nash Weedle posted more than a week ago that the Switch 2 would be getting a big upgrade via the DLSS. In fact, he posted about this over on X, and this is what he had to say about it. He says, Switch 2 specs are leaking, but there are details that haven't been shared yet. One of them is that the Switch 2's DLSS is ready to be updated. And from what I've been able to investigate, it seems that its first update will arrive before the end of the year. And this is not the only time he spoke about it, because I spoke to Nash in one of our podcasts, and he also went into the detail when we were talking about Cyberpunk and specifically DLSS. And this is what he had to say about that upgrade and about future games on the Switch 2.
Están trabajando duramente para actualizar lo que es el DLSS. Va a haber actualizaciones continuas, pero va a haber una muy grande a finales de año. El DLSS de Nintendo Switch 2, que es específico, que ha trabajado en
La del DLS.
Sí, el sistema de rescalado. Exacto. Ahora mismo vemos en algunos vídeos, vemos que ves fallos, ves algunos defectos en el pelo que cuando se mueven y tal, que eso es típico del DLSS, pero van a haber muchas mejoras con respecto a eso. Y creo que me da a mí que una de las mejoras también que han implementado es sobre ese tema en Cyberpunk. Hubo un upgrade muy grande hace, creo que 6 meses o algo así, que también lo comenté en el kit de desarrollo. En el kit de desarrollo de Switch 2 estaban las empresas que estaban trabajando en los juegos bien, pero les hicieron un upgrade muy interesante que consiguieron hacer cositas de eso. Más o menos corresponde con cuando empezaron con, creo, puede ser con Cyberpunk.
There you go, my friends. Super exciting news today. That was Nash Weedle talking about the update on DLSS. And of course, now we know seemingly that developers in the future might get more RAM to run their games. So it looks as though the future already of the Switch 2 is looking secured. It's looking super exciting. And as I said, if we're getting games like Cyberpunk already looking and running so well on the Switch 2, we can only hope what that means going forward, not just for Nintendo games, but for third-party support. And yes, the main one, GTA 6. You know what? I still believe, my friends. I still believe. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Are you excited by this news? How do you think it will change development of games going forward? Super exciting. I will be back tomorrow with even more Nintendo news, my good friend. Until then, have an awesome day. Bye.